It's called Where the Devil Resides, and I call it a steampunk Heart of Darkness, kind of a alternate history noir kind of story.
Awesome. And what attracted you to this particular plot of the film? And that you said steampunk. I don't normally hear that. Like,
Right.
what attracted you to put that theme in?
I wanted to write some alternate history, play with history a little bit, and throw some cool stuff in there like airships and magic and things like that. So.
Awesome. And in terms of the horror genre, is this, with your screenwriting, is this particularly what you normally write in? Or is this kind of like you're dabbling in this one in particular? Or is horror your jam?
Horror is my jam. The steampunk is kind of a new twist for me. But most of the stuff I write borders on dark to really dark. So, yeah.
Strange Clowns. Okay, so you got to tell us. I can guess what this might be about, but do you want to tell us a bit about your project?
Well, we took the typical idea of your killer clown that's running around. Everyone's already seen that movie. But the thing is, the life of the killer clown gets pretty lonely. And, sometimes just running around murdering people isn't enough, and you need to reach out and just find that missing link. So it's actually...
It's a love story?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. It's sort of a love, murder, romance, cannibal story. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, so I have to ask, what inspired you to write that kind of fusion of within the genre?
Well, at least for us, with our films, we always try to take concepts that you're familiar with, that everyone's seen multiple times, and just try to find a different way to fold that in. And it's funny, we have a local commercial back where I'm from the Midwest, and there's a dating website called farmersonly.com. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am not.
But that actually inspired us to, all right, well, if we're getting that specific in terms of dating websites, how much more specific can we get? So.
Wow. Okay. And is horror usually your jam, or is this kind of like your first foray? Have you been doing this for a bit?
We've done a number of horror films. We've done horror shorts and horror features. And so that really does tend to be where we like to play.
And so, in that, so there's been a lot of, mainstream films, horror films kind of making mainstream, kind of getting that Oscar recognition and whatnot. So what's your analysis in terms of, where horror is right now in horror filmmaking, and where do you hope it can go in terms of how viewers in the mainstream kind of receives it?
I'm definitely a kid that grew up with the classic 80s horrors, but the films being made right now, I think it's really inspiring. I think there's just some amazing stuff going on. Some people might think we're drifting too far in the wrong direction. I like opening up the genre, just bring in new audiences, a broader audience, and so that we can find more nuances, so we don't just we only make slasher films or we only make this kind of films. Just broaden it up. I'm really excited about a lot of the films coming out right now.
I am a feature screenplay finalist with Hallow's Point. It's a female-driven vampire film.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So what's a little bit more about your project?
Well, I was inspired by Stephen King and Anne Rice, and I thought, what if there was you have this author who goes on her weekend book tour and meets actual vampires, and how would that encounter, what sort of encounters would happen there, and the horror aspects of that. And I'm just fascinated with vampires, as you can see, and
you've got things, y'all.
And and it was at a time when there was a real call for female characters, and I was just like, I'm just gonna give it a shot, and why not, And it's got action, it's got thrills and scares, and so it's written for a capable actress who can, if she wants to do her own stunts and be real badass, and it's also got horror and comedy and that sort of stuff, but it's well rounded, and the fact that I got into Shriekfest, I'm in awe. I'm really honored.
And in terms, you pointed out that it's like a women-led film, especially, what made you feel compelled to kind of lean towards that in terms of women-led?
Well, I saw Aliens very early. I saw that at 9 years old with my family. We all went. It was like it became our family movie. And the idea of Sigourney Weaver and just a strong warrior, a strong female character has never been a problem for me. So I was just like, why not? And I've just always, I write it with that type of mindset. Why not? Just throw the action and all that sort of cool stuff that is normally reserved for male characters and just not make a big deal of it. It's just she's fighting for her life and making it real. And I think audiences could identify with that if they were, once they see it produced and made out.
We are screening our film Camp Coldbrook on Saturday. Executive produced by Joe Dante from Gremlins and The Burbs and all that good stuff. He's amazing. We have Chad Michael Murray and Danielle Harris in it. So yeah, we're super excited.
Okay, and you want to tell us a little bit about the project?
Sure. It's a paranormal thriller, and it's about a reality ghost hunting team whose show's about to get canceled. And in one last desperate attempt to save their show, they go to a summer camp where these kids were murdered 20 years early. And when they get there, they're so jaded by the fact that they've never seen anything for years, they don't notice that all the stuff starts to happen, and then it gets real bad.
Okay, so would you say is it a comedy, or is it more straight up horror?
Yeah, it's more like a straight up horror, but there's kitschy fun stuff. It's very much like a Joe Dante movie, where it's more of like a scary adventure than it is like a real hardcore horror movie.
And what attracted you to the project?
I came up in reality TV editing. In fact, I still edit reality TV shows all the time. So the fact that that I knew that behind the scenes, that world of the faking the ghost shows and all that kind of stuff, and so I really loved that aspect. And then the idea of it was originally sold as sold us as a found footage, and I said no, we're gonna flip it. So we have found footage elements, but the whole shoot, it's shot traditionally narrative, and the found footage stuff is all we shot on gimbals and stuff like that, so it's all very smooth. Meanwhile, the rest of the movie is shot handheld to feel really organic. So we kind of flipped the script on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What made you want to kind of move from the found footage?
I personally just, and especially when Joe Dante came on board, I kind of wanted to, there's lots of Easter eggs, and I really wanted to kind of do a movie that is like a love letter to Joe, like he did for Spielberg with Gremlins and stuff. So for me, that felt not found footagey, and so that was kind of the natural transition to do something more traditional narrative.
Awesome. So is horror normally your jam, or are you usually this kind of your deal?
Yeah. So this is my fifth movie. My last movie was The Funhouse Massacre, which was a horror comedy. So yeah, I definitely love horror, and I think the thing I love about horror is the fans. Horror fans are the best fans, hands down. There's nobody better than horror fans.
You heard that.
Yeah.
And just lastly, in terms of, with the horror genre, we've seen so many strides made forward in the last year or two in terms of, the recognition of getting with the Oscars, of Jordan Peele and others. What's kind of your thoughts on where horror is now in terms of the mainstream public, and where you kind of hope it goes?
Oh, it's completely elevated, right? It's it is complete. It's totally mainstream. You look at movies like It, and you look at guys like Scott Derrickson, who went on to do Doctor Strange and stuff like that, and horror has a great pedigree of filmmakers that came from that world, and they just continue to ascend up because we know how to make a lot with a little and tell really creative stories, and that translates to the studios when you get to that level.
Yeah, we have a horror short comedy called There's One Inside the House, and it's going to be premiering on the West Coast premiere at noon on Saturday, and it's a monster. It's an old school throwback to a creature features of the 80s, like Chud and that kind of stuff, and we have Amanda Wyss from Nightmare on Elm Street in it, who's a buddy of ours, so it's really fun. And it's about a monster hunter who's more overzealous than he is capable at his job, and his work follows him home to disastrous results.
And what attracted you to that project, to this particular plot and project?
Well, my buddy Matt Cunningham directed it, and he and I wrote it together. He pitched me the idea, and we kind of sent the drafts back and forth, and I added more of my dopiness to it, and he added more of his good horror instincts to it. And we just collaborate really well in that aspect. And I love practical effects. I love practical creatures, the practical gore of the 80s. And so that's what really drew me in, is that we were going to do something that felt tangible and real and not CGI and, where you could be like, oh, a computer did that.
Yeah.
That's why behind the scenes on DVDs now are boring. It's like, computers did it. Cool. Yeah.
No, well, speaking of that, since you're so much with the 80s, would you say the 80s generation is the best in terms of the horror that it put out? Do you want to put that on record here?
I feel like we are getting to a renaissance of horror right now, where I think that the 80s had a little bit more fun with their horror, but now we're getting to critically acclaimed, really amazing films that could be Oscar nominated, or Get Out, that was an Oscar winner. And I think that for a while horror films were kind of just this cult following where only a niche market of people really watched it, and now it's more mainstream, and I think it's a great time to be doing horror, but also a good time to bring back the fun in horror, and not just stuff that makes your skin crawl, but something that makes you laugh as well. as having the scares and things like that.
And in terms of your project, when people walk out of the theater, if they see it, what's the like one message that you would hope they kind of come from with it?
The one message: if you're going to be a monster hunter, maybe train a little bit more than my character does, and don't leave your weapons inside, because he comes out in just his flak vest, and he has to try and attack the monster with a garden gnome, which doesn't work out well. Spoilers.
Spoilers, that sounds very interesting.
It's Killer Kate.
Killer Kate, and you want to tell us a little bit more about Killer Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a family feature slasher with fun and mayhem. It's about two estranged sisters who go away for a bachelor party weekend, and it goes awry.
Okay. And what attracted you to the theme of this project, like that particular plot line with the sister and with the bachelor party and whatnot?
Yes, absolutely. My brother directed the feature, Elliot Feld, and what attracted him to this whole idea was it's a little bit of a love letter to John Carpenter. We're big John Carpenter fans. It's got that whole 80s vibe, the music, the tone. It just lives and breathes in that world.
Awesome. And in terms of the horror genre, is horror usually your jam? Do you normally do horror features, or is this kind of like your first foray?
You know, this is kind of our first foray.
Yeah.
And what are you thinking about it in terms of like going into?
We like it.
You like
The
horror.
horror genre.
Yeah.
This one's a horror comedy.
Yeah.
Not too scary, but it was a lot of fun, and we'd like to do more horror.
Yeah.
I have a screenplay that's a finalist. It's called Pervert.
Pervert. Okay, so I have some guesses, but what's your project about?
Well, it's about all kinds of perversions, but the main thing is like the lead character, she's supposed to be getting married, but she has this sort of secret fetish where she likes to be strangled. And then her fiance gets kidnapped by a serial killer who likes to strangle people. So
Wow.
she's not sure if she should save her or not.
I don't know. I'm afraid to ask. Like, what drew you to this this kind of plot line and thing?
I mean, I've always been really into true crime and things like that. So there's some real life inspirations for the plot, but for me, it's really about like, this is going to sound really bullshitty, but it sounds like it's about the artistic process. And should you let your freak flag fly even if it's not acceptable, or should you do the right thing?
What attracted you to the horror genre?
I don't know when it started. I got a well of fear in me, and I need to like work it out. So I just like that feeling of having like a really intense emotional experience when I watch a film. So
it's called Endless Cycle, and it's about a guy who just needs to do his laundry in a very creepy basement, but there's a demon in the basement, and played by Lauren.
Oh, wow. I love it. Female villain.
Exactly. So he every time he goes and does laundry, he tries to get rid of this demon, but it never works. So it's called Endless Cycle. And yeah.
What attracted you to kind of this idea, or what inspired you to come up with this?
Where we were before, in our apartment, we had to do laundry that was coin operated in a very spooky basement. And I was like, there is definitely a demon up in here. And I was like, what if there was? Let's make a movie.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what drew you to playing the demon?
I'm very interested in special effects makeup, so that was a really great chance for me to...
Did y'all also do the makeup?
Yes.
Wow. And how was that process?
It was amazing. It was arduous. It took like 4 hours each time to get into makeup, so... but it looked really good at the end, and I learned a lot, so...
All learned a lot. Alcohol near your eyeballs, maybe not such a good
not
thing.
the best idea.
So a lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error, yeah.
And is this your first foray into like the short film of horror, or have you been
horror,
doing?
yeah.
Okay.
We usually do comedy, so the film is a little bit horror comedy. So I love comedy, but I like it when it's a little dark and spooky.
Awesome.
This is the first time doing that, yeah.
It's
She wrote it.
it's a story about a guy who's having some problems with his life, and he tries to make things right, and things go awry. And I think people deal with the fact of which character do we support. So it makes for a fun tale.
Things are not what they seem. At first you feel sorry for somebody, and you discover down the line that you should not feel sorry for that person. You should feel sorry for the bad person.
It's a hostage situation gone very wrong.
Okay.
Very wrong.
and what attracted you to doing this kind of project with this kind of theme in it?
I wrote it because of her.
She's like, oh, she looks like a good hostage. I should put her in the back of a car.
This is a mother-daughter duo, and Venita's always writing sick, twisted things to put her daughter in.
Yeah.
So
That sounds like a family affair.
yeah.
She can abuse me more than other actors.
That's correct. That's why I made her.
Just for the horror genre.
Yes.
So if there's like one particular kind of message that you would hope people kind of walk away from when watching this, besides like things aren't what they seem, what would it be? Like if there's one thing.
Don't rob a bank.
And
There's
don't
so many like,
And-
I'm like really intrigued.
and don't be a serial killer.
Okay.
Be careful in the woods.
There's a bank robbery, serial killer, and be careful in the woods. There's a lot going on, y'all.
It's a project called Best Friends, and it's a horror story, but it's an allegory about child abuse. Because lots of fun, I guess. But I like it a lot. Not child abuse.
No,
But
not. We got that.
they're writing the multiple meanings and trying to address an issue that I thought was kind of important.
Is that what drew you to the project, this particular theme, and why it was like relevant and kind of putting that into the horror genre?
That's for this particular project, yeah. It's part of a bigger collection of projects that are a series of Twilight Zone type shorts that we're filming up in Portland. In fact, the script that's in the finals this year has already been filmed. When Denise called and told us it was in the finals, we said, in 2 days we're filming this. We just got funded.
Congrats on that.
Thanks.
And in terms of if there's aside from with the issue of child abuse, are there other themes in this film that you're hoping people kind of walk away from when it gets produced or when they read the script?
For this particular?
Yeah, like any other themes.
Like the whole Rose City Underground, what are the other themes in our project?
Oh, in general, dealing with isolation, perception, trying to understand how people are seeing, what they're seeing, why they're seeing it, and to understand that they might see it even though you don't, and to listen, just to be a part of what they're experiencing without necessarily experiencing it yourself.